Welcome to MyLife, Tanya Applied, with Rabbi Jacobson, a journey into the deepest teachings of Torah and their application to our personal, emotional, and psychological lives.
We continue our journey in the life-changing Sefer Tanya. This program is made possible by Rena Lights LLC, and it is in honor and memory of Rabbi Yosef Halevi Weinberg, Olav HaShalom, and Rabbi Moshe Pinchas HaKoyen Katz, Olav HaShalom. It is also in schus and merit of Rav Zev Yecheskel and Risha Katz La'edich Yomim V'Shanim Tevis for many healthy years. In this magnum opus of Tanya, we have a magnum opus within the magnum opus, and that is Perek Beis, the second chapter that we're in the middle of learning. Really dissecting and understanding the anatomy of the neshama, and namely the nefesh elikis, the divine soul. So let me break it down, what we've learned so far, and what we're going to continue to learn as we can come to the conclusion of this chapter. We've learned that in contrast to the animal soul, which comes from klipas nega, a divine energy that is enclosed within a klippa, within a casing, a shell, a husk, and therefore it relates to and is engaged with the material world. The divine soul, the nefesh hashenis b'Yisrael, is a chelik elikam emal mamish. It is pure, undiluted, divine energy. And the Alter Rebbe explained it, bringing the different proofs. We say, Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. In contrast to every other creation, which God created with His words, here He created Vayipach, with an innermost energy that comes like a breath, a deeper inner breath. And the neshama is compared to a child. B'ni b'cher Yisrael, bonim atem l'Hashem alekechem. Like a ben is not just a student of its teacher. A ben is an actual part of the very genetic material of the father. Metipas moyach ha'av. From the drop that comes, that originates from the mind and the brain of the father. So from all this we see that this nefesh elikis is connected intrinsically and expresses and mirrors and reflects divinity without the garments. Or we should say without the klippa, the shell that the animal soul has. Finally, the Alter Rebbe says, Ola b'machshavte yizbarach. Neshama is olo, which means that they originate in that highest place and they travel through the machshava, the thought, and chochmose yizbarach. So even as the soul travels through Seder Ishtalshalos, it's beginning to take shape and form. So besides the fact that it originates from chelik elikam emal mamish, pure undiluted divinity, it also manifests in chochmah, which is hu v'chochmose echad. The Eibishter is one with his chachma, with his wisdom. And as we learned in the Haggadah, in the Tanya and Perek Beis, the different ways to understand it, the Rambam, the Ramak, the Arizal. But bottom line is that even according to the Arizal, hu v'chachmas echad in atzilus. So even as the neshama manifests in chachma, like it is with the moyach ha'av, and here even more so because it's Hashem, it's the Eibishter, we can't understand this unity. He says it's beyond us understanding. So the neshama, even as it manifests in chachma, which is already some form of structure, it's united completely with elokus. Okay. But then came the question, or the qualification, what about all the different levels of souls then? You could say they all begin the journey from that profound divine place. But as they travel, there's big differences between leaders, Reish B'nai Yisrael, like he said, he equates them with a head, and with those neshamas that relate to the akfayim, to the heels. People who have simpler or lower level souls. And the answer is no. Nevertheless, it's still all rooted. And he gives the example, exactly the same example with that child. That even though the tipas moyach, even though it becomes the source for everything the child of that father is, from head to toe, from the reish, from his head, to the toenails of the child, all come from that tipa. They all come from that seed. So as such, same thing in the nimshal, that kemosh ben and nimshal mechav shafilit seporni raglev nisava metipa zu mamish, through the pregnancy. So we're even seeing the development of the child through the pregnancy in the mother's womb. So even as it goes through all the stages, its fundamental genetic makeup, even I'm talking about a physical child, furthermore, so in other words, it's connected with that pipas me'achav, with that core life force. We're still talking about the mashal example. Furthermore, gam achshav, also when the child is born, the anikas atzaparnaim, even the toenails receive their energy from the central nervous system, from the mind, that controls the entire body. The chayusam, and its energy, nimshachas ma'amoyach shebereish, of the child. And as such, it connects to the moyach shebereish of its father. This is all in the mashal and the nimshal. So, in the nimshal, in the moral, as we learned, the kocha mamish kavyocha b'sheidish kol nefesh kol hanefesh ruach neshama shel klolos Yisrael l'mayla. The same thing, exactly the same thing, obviously in a figurative way because it's not physical, is with klolos Yisrael as they come down level by level, like the example of the child developing in the fetus, in the womb. The fetus developing in the womb, as it comes through the ishtalshus ha'elemus of Etzilas Bri Yetzir Asiyah. Mechachmasi is baruch. So this nefesh ruach neshama of all souls, even the lowest of souls, are all connected. V'im kol zeh eidenu kshurus u'miyichudus biyichud nifle v'otzim b'mhusim v'atzmusam arishin she'amshachas chachmi elah. It's all rooted, just like the full child, the complete child from head to toe, to the footnails, to the toenails, is rooted in that core DNA and genetic material of the father. So too spiritually, the neshama, no matter what level of neshama, even a neshama that's on the level of a kvaim, of a heel or a footnail. Doesn't say the neshama is on the level of footnail, but just as an example, as a toenail, yet it's connected with mehusim batzmusan, with the chachmi law, which is the equivalent of the tipa and b'mayach ha'av. So what do we see from this? Before we continue, this is where we stopped in the last year, that the neshama, no matter where it's going throughout its journey, and no matter what level, all rooted back to the original source. So here we have, chelik elikam imal mamish is the core entity. It's expressed through vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim, the breath. It's expressed through like a child from a father. Tipas moyach ha'av, machshavte chachmosei. So even as the chelik elikam imal mamish goes into chachmosei yizbarach, it's still fully connected. Even as it branches into many souls, it's still connected to chachmosei yizbarach, to the Eibishter's supernal mind, and supernal wisdom. Like a child is connected to the whole child, no matter what level of soul, is connected to the core of the essential tipa, the seed of the father. So there you have it. Though it branches off and it goes through Atzilas Bri Yetzir Asiyah, the pregnancy, which is all rooted in the Chachma. The Chachma is one Huva Chachmos Echad with the source, with the essential source. And there you have the Chelik Elikam Mamash remains intact no matter where the soul goes and no matter what level it's on. This is the eloquent way the Alter Rebbe describes so-called the tree of neshamas. Literally like a tree. It starts with roots, of course, with a trunk, and then as it branches off, it's still connected and all part of that original source. At the same time, there are distinctions, clearly distinctions between souls. But now comes to make it even richer and the connection even deeper, because you could still argue, you could say, okay, fine, the neshama, the soul, fundamentally is rooted all the way in the chelik elikam and mal mamish, but it did come down. It's now on the level of akfayim. It's like a heel. It doesn't have many giluyim. It doesn't have the ava v'yira, the love and awe of God, the capacity to, the cognitive capacity to understand the divine. It's not a neshama like Moshe Rabbeinu, or the ovis, like he said. It's on a lower level. Even Pchusei Erech, he said, Amaratz Pchusei, even very simple folk. So the heart and essence of it, yes, they're connected. But how do you actualize that? Remember, the whole point of the Tanya is not just to tell us what levels we connect with, but that we how to connect to it. So you can make an argument, someone who's a Pchusei Erech, what he calls a simple person, in the words of the Alter Rebbe, the last words we learned, Pchusei Erech, Amei Oretz of Pchusei Erech, which is defined as simple people who don't have that power of a neshama active. Of course, their essence is that way. So the Alter Rebbe adds something more, going back to the moshel. Remember, in the moshel, he said that not only is the entire child coming from the core root of the genetic code, the genetic material of the father, of the moyach ha'av, from the mind of the father, where in the nimshal, the mind of the father is chachmosei shel kodesh baruch hu, God's mind, the divine mind, the supernal mind, the supernal wisdom. And the child is the neshama, b'nei b'chei Yisrael, the child of that, from the child of God. So not only are we rooted, but remember he said that even when the child becomes an independent entity, all the child itself also has levels. We're talking about the neshama connected to its father. So we made it clear, no matter what level of soul, like no matter what level of the child's body and being is connected to his father. But the child also have a structure. And in the structure of the child, even the toenails of the child, which means the lower levels of the souls and the nimshal and the moral, are connected to the mind of the child, which is the neshamas that are like a mind. Reisha b'nei Yisrael, the leaders, as we're going to learn in a moment in the nimshal. So in addition to the child being connected to its father, to its essence of its father, the child, the lowest levels of the child's body and being are connected to the highest levels of the child's being. And it flows through there. So now we're going to have chachmosei of the father connecting to chachmosei. The moyach of the father connects to the moyach of the child, and the moyach of the child sustains and gives energy to all parts of the child, giving every part of the child, even the lower levels, access to the moyach, which travels straight to the moyach of the father, which connects to the chelik elikam and mal mamish, because hu v'chachmosei echad. So now let's learn it inside. What is in the nimshal, this aspect? This adds another component, which explains how we actually actualize the chelik elikam and mal mamish within us. So the Alter Rebbe continues, just like we said in the moshel, that after the child is born, like he said, he now says like this. Key, after saying that no matter what level the soul is, it's he says, Ki yenikas v'chayis nefesh ruach neshama shel amei ha'oretz hu menefesh ruach neshama shel atzadikim v'achachamim. So till now, he just spoke about the fact that there are greater souls and there are lower souls. There are souls that are considered like the head. There are souls that are considered like the akfayim, like the heels. So now he says, Ki, this is because the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the simple folk are nurtured and energized from the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the tzaddikim, the spiritual giants, and the scholars. Read again. Ki yenikas v'chayis nefesh, ruach, neshama shel amei ha'oretz, which we compare to the legs, the nails, the toes, the heels. Just as in a child, just as the toenails and the whole body are all connected with and receiving their energy and their sustenance and their guidance, central nervous system of the brain and the mind of the child, so too it is with in the Nimshal that every soul receives it from the child's mind, which connects to the father's mind, which is the most basic way to explain Tanya. There are other explanations, but we'll stick with this one. Okay, they are called, and who are these people called? Reishei b'nei Yisrael shebedeiram, the heads of children of Israel in their generation. This is from the Bamidbar, Yud Gimel Gimel in Baal Eschol. Reishei b'nei Yisrael. So just as the Tziparnaim, if you look in the Moshel, go back, Nimshach ma moyach shabareish, that in a human being itself, who guides? Where's the central nervous system? Who's the captain of the ship? And who is guiding him through nerves and through all its messages and signals to the entire body? Not just the movement of every part of the body, but the very sustenance of the body is coming from the brain that travels through the spinal cord, through the entire body. So too in the Nimshal and the Ruchnius of it, that all souls, all which we are all part of one larger body, Kema Achas Shlema, as we discussed, that the Jewish people are all part of one larger structure. So that structure concludes of many different types of souls, a multitudes of souls, as we learned earlier. So even the lowest of souls, all of them, are all guided by the Rosh B'nai Yisrael, which is the equivalent of the mind, basically the metaphorical, or you say the cosmic mind of the Jewish people themselves, the cosmic mind of the entire body, of the Jewish structure. So in addition to the entire child receiving its energy from the father, which is God in this case, Chachmasei is Baruch. That Chachmasei is Baruch, as it gives birth to a child, and the child is part of that essence, the entire child, from the highest souls to the lowest souls. In addition, the souls also have an additional support. They're all part of each other, and therefore the lowest part of the body, the lowest souls, are connected with the highest souls, Reishei b'nei Yisrael. Which of course, as we're going to learn now, is not just a side point. It actually explains how all of us, who are subjective and limited and distracted by the material world, are able to actually connect to the highest levels of Elokus, godliness. Because we have part of us, part of our larger body, you can say our organism, is the Rosh B'nai Yisrael. They're part of us. A body is not just a head, it's not just toes, it's not just all the parts in between. It's all one body, one entity. But not just one entity, it's an entity that connects us back to Chachmasei of the Moyach Ha'av, God, which is Chuva Chachmasei Echad, back to Chelik Elikam Emal Mamish. And this is how it branches off. So though the energy is flowing through Chachma, first the Chachma of the father, from that tippa, from that seed, gives birth to the child. And then from Chachma of the child, which in turn energizes and sustains the entire body, everyone's taken in account for. So we're not just relying on the fact that we have a Chelik Elikam Emal Mamish, we also have the support and the guidance, like a mind that guides the entire body. The same thing, the Rosh B'nai Yisrael guiding every neshama and helping them grow. So now the Alter Rebbe continues. Ubezeh yuven Maimer Razal. With this we'll understand the Maimer Razal al posek uladovka boy. And this explains a teaching of our sages of blessed memory on the verse, and attach yourself to him. In Dvarim, Sefer Dvarim 30:20, Lamed Chof, it says, the pasuk says, Uladovka boy. The Gemara asks, in Talmud, in Ksubis, Kuf Yud Aleph Omid Beis, and is quoted in Rashi in Dvarim, in a different place, Yud Aleph Chav Beis, 11:22. How is it possible to connect to him, to the Eibishter? We're far beyond him. And an answer, Shekol, Hadovak, B'Talmidei Chachamim, Maila Lavakosov, Kilu Nidbak B'Shchina. That anyone who attaches himself to scholars is considered by the scripture, by Torah, to have attached himself to the divine presence literally. That's what he says. Ki'ilu nidbak b'shchina, mamish. Similar word like he's used in the beginning of the Perek, mamish. So here comes an obvious question. What do these Talmidei Chachamim have that allows us to connect to the Shekhinah? They're also mortal human beings, like we are. Yes, they're on a much higher level, but they're still mortal human beings. The Lashon in the Gemara, V'che'efshel le'odam lidabek b'Shekhinah, that's the Lashon of Chazal. So how's the Alter Rebbe answer it? So he explains that this will be understood based on what we've said earlier. What did we say earlier? So he says, K'al-yidei dveikus, k'al-yidei deviko, b'talmidei chachamim, because by attaching themselves to scholars, kshuris nefesh ruach neshama shel amei haaretz u'miyechodes b'mechuson harishin v'shoshim shebachachma ilah. The nefesh ruach neshama. Remember, we learned that then every neshama is made up of nefesh ruach neshama chay yechida. Here he's focusing on nefesh ruach neshama, the behavioral, the emotional, and the cognitive of even the simple folk are consciously connected with their original source and root in the supernal wisdom of Hashem. Shehu yizbarach v'chachmase echad v'hu hamada. He's going back and quoting that the Eibishter, he and his wisdom are one, and he has the power to know, like we learned before from the Rambam. Why is he citing it here? Because the whole point is, we're not connecting to Talmidei Chacham, we're connecting to the Eibishter. However, Talmidei Chacham, because they are completely dedicated to learning Torah, in other words, their involvement is in Chachma, so their minds are completely focused on the mind of God. So through their minds, all of us, all neshamas get connected to the mind of the Eibishter, which is one with the Eibishter himself, hu chachmas echad hu amada. Exactly what we learned before. So the Talmidei Chachamim are serving as an interface, chachma, the chachma of human beings connects with we human beings connect with the chachma of Talmidei Chachamim. So that connects the nefesh ruach neshama of the amei haaretz, even the simple folk. When they connect with Talmidei Chachamim, like he said, that they connect, this dveikus, this attachment, Talmidei Chachamim, attaches to the mind, which attaches to the mind of the Eibishter. Because like the child, even the toenails, you're connecting to the mind of the child, which in turn connects to the mind of the father, which in turn is one with the Father himself. The supernal wisdom. And that's why you can say, the Ludov Kaboy. My love, because of nidbak ki'ilu nidbak b'shchina mamish. So besides a beautiful explanation in this Maimer Chazal, we also have here something even more powerful. We have a real process of how we taka connect. So every neshama connects to the Roshi Alf Yisrael, the Roshi, like you said, Bnei Yisrael Shabbateiram. The Jewish people connected to the Moshe in their time. And there's a Moshe in every generation. The Moshe is the one that goes up on the mountain and receives the Torah. He's not replacing, God forbid, the relationship of the Jewish people with God. He's what's called a Mamutza Machaber, a transparent interface. But his Moyach is completely immersed and connected with the Moyach of Torah. Chachmas Shel Torah, which is connected with Chachmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in effect, every neshama, even though the neshamas then were all on a higher level, Deya, but relative to Moshe, the entire body of the Jewish people, the entire body, from head to toe, is now connected to the Chachma of the Reish, which is Moshe, who in turn is connected to the Shekhinah. So they all become one seamless connection all the way to the Shekhinah Mamish. Like he says again, Miyuchadz b'mechusan harishan v'shashin shebachachma ilo shu yizborach. It's not a connection to the Chachma of the teacher, it's a connection to the Chachma of the Eibishter through the teacher. So you could say, so why do we need a teacher? Because human beings on this earth As I said before, we're subjective, we're distracted. Ein chovish mater esatzmei, we can't redeem ourselves from our own blocks and obstacles. As the Alter Rebbe wrote in a letter, well, it wasn't a letter, it was a response, when he was arrested. So the ministers were interrogating him. They asked him questions, and some of them he answered in writing. He wrote in Hebrew, and then it was translated into Russian. One of the questions, what's the role of a Rebbe? And he answered, literally this, but in simple Balabatisha terms that even a Russian minister could understand, even a non-Jew. What did he say? Every human being is subjective. Ein chovish mater esatzmei, which means when you're in a pit, when you're in fetters, you're tied up, you can't untie yourself. Or in psychological terms, when you're biased or prejudiced, you can't see through it because you have a blind spot. So you have a Rebbe, you have a teacher who stands above this subjectivity and can give objective advice. Obviously, that's on a very basic level. On a deeper level, it allows a human being to transcend and to reach heights that they on their own may not be able to reach. Of course, the neshama is connected all the way with the Father, with Chachmasi Yisbarach. But on a revealed level, you need a teacher. It's like saying, why do we need teachers? Why do we need education? Even the greatest tzaddikim and rabbeim, you need a teacher because the Eibishter made us in a way that even though you may be born with a great soul, or whatever soul, you need work to reveal it. You learn Aleph Beis, Teirat Tzivilon Moshe. You climb step by step. That's the process of education. Yes, a brilliant mind, a great neshama may pick it up quickly. It may not take that much time. But everybody needs the process, just like nobody's born 20 years old. We're born as babies, newborn babies, taught the entire Torah in our mother's womb, mind you, which means it's all embedded, it's just not conscious. And then starts the process of chinuch, which is essentially revealing that connection. It's not creating the connection, it's revealing the connection. So our dveikus, our cleaving, our attachment, our iskashrus to Talmidei Chachamim, to the Roshei Bnei Yisrael, every generation, helps reveal our fundamental and inherent connection with Chachmasi Yisbarach, and who Yisbarach v'Chachmasi Echad v'hu Amada. So essentially, you're connecting with the Eibishter himself, the Shechina Mamish. So we see how the whole process works. The next section, the Alter Rebbe is going to do a brackets where he's going to explain what about Peishim and Merdei b'Talmidei Chachamim. What about those that defy and betray and rebel against these Talmidei Chachamim? What happens with them? Seeing how the Alter Rebbe is bavorning every scenario. They also, we say, are chelik elikam mal mamish. So that we'll leave for the next program. With that, let us conclude. And obviously, this message is critical in our lives, especially in these days, the saddest days, leading into Tisha B'Av, which is all about the concealments with the goal of revealing the divine. And it's all there, all we need to do is access it. That can take work. And our iskashus to Talmidei Chacham, our dveikus, helps us rise above and transcend. This program and all programs can be seen and archived at TanyaApplied.com. You can also pose any of your questions. Kol Tuv, and we should only have simchas.
This has been My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Please join us again next week. Visit ChasidusApplied.com for archived classes and more resources.